What we're going to be doing today is just really talking about how it is that we work together on Digital Voices, which is really part of the Voices project. So I'm Catherine, and I'm one of the researchers from Children North East who's been involved in this all the way along. Do you want to?
I'm Chris Bolam. I'm a science teacher who works at Venerable Bede C of E Academy.
And I'm Natalie Lamport, and I am part of the skills team who manages one of the school projects at Sunderland Software City.
Okay, thanks. And we'll talk a little bit more about, sort of your roles and how you've been involved further on. So today, what it is that we're going to be talking about is about what we're calling digital voices. So Voices is a research project which was led by Newcastle University and Children North East, and it started in 2020 after the pandemic had been going for a few months. And what we were really keen to do was to look at the impact of COVID on the lives of young people. We wanted to speak to children and young people from across the whole of the North East region and try and understand what was going on in their lives, what was important to them, how they felt about that, and what they wanted to say to decision makers, really. Overall, the team of researchers managed to speak to over 1,100 young people in focus groups, including some at Venerable Bede, so that was quite nice. And we asked them about a whole range of different aspects of their lives. We also had responses from another 700 who sent in some writing and drawing packs and responded to some key questions. One of the things that we talked about in the focus groups was their digital lives. And actually, when we got the packs back, the number of them that had a computer or a laptop or a phone or something in them, it just showed how important their devices had been to them over the course of the whole of the pandemic. But when we asked them about this, the majority of them said they spent much more time online during COVID, both for school, for learning, and also for pleasure. However, they did really see this. They talked about it in quite negative terms. They would talk about it as saying we spend far too much time online, and they couldn't. They used the words they were addicted to being online, and they said that they wanted to try and cut down on screen time. That they got frustrated sometimes when they were playing on their games, and that had an impact on their social skills. So they would be called for their dinner and they wouldn't want to go down and go and eat because they wanted to stay in the rooms and be online. That they were online late into the night and sometimes they were staying up all night. Another aspect of what they talked about was that, their sleep patterns were quite disrupted and they didn't necessarily make the connection between being online and having disrupted sleep patterns, but it's possible that was part of the case. Some of them talked about spending upwards of 10 hours a day online. They did also see it as being quite a positive thing. In some ways, they recognised that they were able to stay in touch with friends and family, talked about having grandparents who were using FaceTime for the first time. And, so that was really nice. It was nice to talk to them about that. But, and they also talked about being the escapism of being able to get involved in something which was outside of the room and the four walls that they were looking at. One of the things they did say was that their parents, especially, but other adults as well, talked to them about spending too much time online and said they should stop looking at their phones and try and do something else. Go out and walk the dog or go and play in the garden with your little sister or whatever it might be. So it felt as if overall there was quite a negative message which was coming across. When we fed this back in one of the Voices advisory group meetings, there were some colleagues from Sunderland Software City there, and they were sort of quite interested in what was being said. So I'm going to hand over to Natalie now and just sort of ask to sort of explain what was it about that aspect and about some of those things that I've just said that got you interested.
Yeah, so as part of what Sunderland Software City do, to try and sort of raise the profile of the tech sector in the region, we deliver some programs within schools, and we felt that it's important to understand what it is the students need from the project. So we have a list of what we feel would make a good project or what teachers might feel would be a good programme to run, and what the funders or the council think would be good. But that's not always the same as what the students feel would be best for them. And I think sometimes, although we can't always do everything that the students want all of the time, it's important to at least be mindful of it so that you can try and incorporate it to keep the engagement that way. So that was one part of it, was to understand what the children want, to make sure that our programs were as beneficial as possible and that they were doing the job that they were supposed to do, and that we were having those real positive outcomes, not just sort of ticking a box. But also, like you say, there was a lot of negative perceptions around the use of tech throughout the pandemic, and students often, associated it with negative words like I was addicted, or that my parents said that I shouldn't be spending this much time online. And we wanted to kind of not completely flip that on the head, because of course we don't want to encourage children to be online all day every day, because that's not good for anybody. But what we did want them to see was there's actually a really positive element as well, and you've learned all these skills, and and this is what it could lead to in the future, and these are the opportunities that are available to you now that may not have been available to students pre-pandemic who don't have the same level of digital skills.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is certainly something about the amount of time they spent online did mean that they are probably the most digitally technology literate, savvy, that's a good word,
Absolutely.
out of any generation there's ever been. And
Definitely.
So there was something quite...
And they don't know that.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah, and there's something kind of like empowering about that actually, yes, you've had this really terrible kind of experience in terms of your education and your social life, but actually there's something really good that's come out of it as well. So it was about getting them to see that and how we could do that.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the conversations that we had early on, and certainly a conversation I had with you, Chris, was just around that. I think a phrase you used quite often was silver lining.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that one of your favourite phrases?
It is, yes. I try to see them in everything that I do in life.
Yeah. And so we talked about, after we'd sort of had this idea, can we do something about this? Can we, take some of those ideas and those things that we've heard and do something with Sunderland Software City? And because it was Sunderland, then we thought we need a school in Sunderland as well. And so came along to you. But I mean, you'd been involved in some of the focus groups earlier, hadn't you?
Yeah, we did 4 or 5 focus groups over Teams with one of your colleagues at Children's North East, where they looked at different year groups, and we got a collection of, I think, 20 students each time.
Mm-hmm.
And they shared their thoughts about all sorts of things to do with the pandemic. How did they feel about their social lives? How did it affect their family life? What about their learning overall? And it did come back overall negative initially, and it felt like it was a terrible situation and they just wanted to be with their friends all of the time. But what they'd really found out by the end of the session was actually they'd shown a lot of resilience, and they'd shown that they are capable of working around problems that they come up against.
Yeah. I think that really came out in the conversations that we had, didn't we? So, I mean, one of the things that we talked about was, was there something there worth exploring? I think we all felt as though there were things that we could get out of it. And we had an initial Teams conversation with us and some other colleagues as well. And from our perspective, from Voice's perspective, what we were really keen on was, the aim of the project in the first place was that young people's voices could be heard and they would be listened to and they would have an impact on policy practice going forward. That's what we were aiming for. I think you've probably said what Sunderland Software City wanted out of it. Do you want to?
Yeah. So basically, like I said, we run school programs, and we wanted to make sure that they were as beneficial to the students as they could be. And that really what the students need and what we were delivering was sort of succinct and in line with each other, instead of us thinking, oh, this is a really good idea, let's do this, and the students aren't engaging because it's not what they need. And it's also useful to understand what they understand about their skills and their needs, and to just really inform what we're delivering.
Yeah. And Chris, from your point of view, what did you think Venerable Bede could get out of it? I mean, you sold it to your head teacher, so give us your pitch.
Well, my head teacher passed the idea down to me initially and said, would you like to do this? Just the focus groups with Children's North East, and he just wanted to know what effects the pandemic had had on our young people that we have. And that was enough for me to be interested. I wanted to know the answer too. And when we got to the end of the focus groups, I told him that you guys were interested in doing a little bit of a follow-up lesson to get students to understand specifically what they can get out of their experiences. And it wasn't just about resilience, it was actually all of those technological skills that they've developed are really useful in getting a job or just throughout their life. And they had no idea about that at all. And I knew that that was going to be what the silver lining was in this case, but they didn't. And it was quite easy for me to sell that to my head teacher. It didn't take much effort on that part, because she was like, yeah, actually, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we are aiming to get a lesson that we can deliver in our personal development lessons, where students explore what they think they got out of lockdown, what it felt like initially, and what they can do with those skills or what they've learned from lockdown. And then the bit that's really important is understanding what jobs they can access from that. Because ultimately, every school should be about making people who are well-rounded and able to function in society. And this is a big part of what that is.
Yeah. Do you mean that specifically around the digital skills or wider than that?
Everything initially, but this is a nice little facet that's important.
Yeah.
It's never going to go away. We're always going to have computers in our lives.
Yeah.
So them using these skills effectively is really important.
Yeah.
Most of our kids are not done more than log on to email or use a computer for PowerPoint. And now they're using it to send their work to teachers. They're also communicating over Teams. They're doing loads of things, and they're using a software that we've got called Class Charts as well to understand how their behaviour and is affecting their learning and what rewards they can get from that as well.
All right. Oh, that sounds quite exciting. Maybe that's another video podcast in the future.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what we came up with was the idea that we would run a lesson, a workshop. So Sunderland Software City would do a workshop at Venerable Bede, and it was, I think, how many? It was year 8s, wasn't it?
They were year 8, and I think we had 20.
And they came out of lessons, so you knew some of them.
Approximately half of them were from my form class, which made it a lot easier to get the logistics together. And the other half were from another science teacher, which made it even easier to do. And they all caught up on their lessons. That was no problem. But they were really keen and eager to share their views, because they realised that someone's listening to them and they can have an impact on future young people that are going through the same stage as they are, just a bit behind them currently.
Yeah.
And they really liked that. That's all this selling I needed to do for them. They were like, yeah, we want to tell people what we've experienced. We want to tell them what we want and what we learned from this. So that wasn't hard at all.
Yeah. And I mean, they, sort of during the workshop, they were brilliant. They were, really sort of open and talking.
It's hard to stop them talking sometimes.
And so, I mean, the sort of workshop itself, now you weren't there, were you, Natalie? You were
I wasn't there on the day, no, because I had COVID, but I was involved in designing the workshop and the lesson plan,
Yeah. So do you want to talk us through what the sort of workshop did? Because I know you did a lot of the planning and preparation for it.
Yeah. So it was all geared around just starting them really important conversations and opening up discussion around what their kind of perceptions were of their use of tech throughout the pandemic, and then what skills they feel they might have learned from that, and then actually what skills you need for working in the tech sector or digital, and actually how a lot of them were the same, and about how a lot of the opportunities opened up to them because of them skills, and how they fit together, and how like it's a silver lining. And and they were very surprised at actually how a lot of them did have some positive words, and although they did feel that the parents often had negative views, actually they were understood that they were even at only year 8, which is quite early in
the of them that were talking about it and said, actually I know how to do that now, and I need to use that in a job. Oh, that's easy. They
really seemed to understand it, and which was great. Would be interested in doing it with different year groups and seeing how that changes, maybe between year 8 and year 11, on how that sort of develops over time. like if they have a better understanding or different perceptions when they're older, or it would be interesting to see that, I feel. But overall, yeah, that was what the lesson plan was aimed to sort of start them really important discussions and get them thinking about how them skills that they've been using can actually lead to really great careers.
And I think it managed to do that. I mean, certainly one of the things I was surprised at, that even though they were relatively young, quite a few of them had some really good ideas about what they wanted to do in the future. So animal conservationist was one. One lad wanted to earn lots of money and go into financial sector.
Yeah, there was quite a few. They've got some wild ideas.
Yeah, air traffic controller.
There's two of them in my form.
Architect.
Yes, all of these are definitely what they've come up with, and they've mentioned since then as well.
Yeah.
But I think the strongest factor for them is realising that these jobs using IT get them loads of money.
Yeah, that's a big motivator, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I was surprised at how much they thought money was so important to them. And because that's not so much the case with me. It's nice to have some money, but that's not my driving force for doing the job I do.
Yeah.
I guess this is why it's important to have the conversations and do work like this, because I probably wouldn't have assumed that students of year 8 would be thinking about the salary yet, but if they are, then that can inform what we're delivering in future, can't it? So that's why it's important.
Give them that carrot to work harder, is it?
Exactly,
you'll get loads of money for doing this.
Although we have to be careful not to oversell, because they might. And I think
indeed, yes.
One of the key things was the input that Jill was able to make in terms of just saying how big the tech sector is in the area. And I know that there was lots of facts and figures there, which I can't remember any of them now, but at the time I was like, wow.
Well, their eyes lit up when they saw that. They were like, it's happening here. This is great. They had no idea any of this was happening on the doorstep. They just thought they had the Nissan factory, and that's about it.
Yeah.
The whole premise really of our school programmes is getting across that message that you don't have to move to London to work in tech. It's all going on right here. We just need the sort of skilled people to enable it.
The pandemic's made it easier to work outside of London, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely,
Silver linings.
One of the things that I was really shocked isn't too strong a word for it, was when Jill asked a question, how do you feel about using tech? And because I'd heard a lot of negative things beforehand, and I think when I'd sold it to other people, I was like, they've got such a negative idea, it should be. And the words that they came out with then really surprised me. So how do you feel when you're using tech? It's really freeing. I find it really relaxing. I can just go to a different place. They just really enjoyed it. They saw it as being something which was...
It's their equivalent of playing out, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And I wasn't expecting that at all. And I think that's oh, right, okay. So you're not feeling negative about this at all. But they were really, they saw it as escapism and as relaxation. One of the other things I noticed while they were in the workshop was how tech savvy they are. They said, they can text underneath the table.
Not something we encourage at school.
But, they said, they can do lots of things at once, and just that, what is it? It's muscle memory in your brain, is it?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure.
And multitasking.
Yes, yeah, and they're young, aren't they? So, just lots of really positive things that they could do as a result of that. So where we're at now is, where are we at now? So what's happened since we had that workshop? I think you did some videoing for us, didn't you?
Yes, we needed some follow-up interviews with students asking 4 or 5 main questions, including how did they feel about technology. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but it was those questions that really helped summarize the session in interview form.
Yeah.
And they were able to answer most of the questions themselves. I let them pick which questions they thought they were strongest on, and that was nice. And they all were able to do 2 or 3 questions each, and it was really nice to hear their answers again, just saying how happy they are that they're able to use technology, and the alternative is they can't think of an alternative. This is what they know and work well with. They've adapted to their situation really, really well. Just like probably any generation would. It's just that this generation has these conditions themselves.
It's been accelerated, hasn't
Yeah,
it? You know,
most
they wouldn't be in
definitely.
this position now if we hadn't had COVID for the last
Oh no,
2 years.
definitely not.
Yeah.
It would be like students from 4 or 5 years ago. There's no other. That's the only major change that we've had.
And so, and then from, so the lesson plan has been put together.
The lesson plan, yes, and a presentation to go alongside, and we're also going to work on some CPD so that we can ensure that the students are getting the same message, kind of, whether it be from us or yourself or from teachers, and that everyone's in understanding of sort of what the opportunities are and how these skills can be used, and they're kind of really getting that message all of the time.
Yeah, I found that the most useful thing that we've got from it so far is knowing what jobs are available. Because as a teacher, I know you can be a teacher, but I don't want to advise everyone to do that, because then there'll be nothing else. And that doesn't make sense. I'm teaching people to be better at other jobs that I might not necessarily know about. And the more I know about those, the better informed I can be to help them.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, that's one of the biggest things I've got from this. And I'm hoping that's going to transfer over to the young people I work with.
Okay, and so it feels like there is going to be, this was a conversation. It started from a conversation and it's gone forward, and what has come out of it is something which is going to have an impact much wider than just that group of 20 year
most
eights.
Definitely, yeah.
But I mean, hopefully throughout Venerable Bede, but then wider across other schools and other teachers. And so I think that means that we managed to achieve the aim. From a Voices perspective, we've managed to achieve the aim of what we wanted, that young people, what they're saying and feeling is really having an impact on the other things that are happening. And it sounds like we've all gained out of it, all of our organisations and all of us personally.
Like we
Yeah,
have,
completely agree, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. That's brilliant. Thank you for being involved,
Thank you.
and thank you for coming
been a
along and talking
pleasure.
today.
Yeah, it's been
Thanks.
great.
Thanks.